Damning new audio from the 911 call made by Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's staff seems to indicate there was indeed an attempt to cover up Austin's sudden New Year's Day hospitalization. The Daily Beast acquired the 911 tapes. Let's listen.
Can I ask, like, can the ambulance not show up with lights and sirens? We're trying to remain a little subtle.
Now, Walter Reed National Military Medical Center officials confirmed the secretary was suffering from nausea with severe abdominal, hip, and leg pain when he arrived at the hospital. As a reminder, the White House was completely taken by surprise about Austin's hospitalization, though they attempted to allay fears about who was in charge while he was, in fact, incapacitated. Here's John Kirby as the story first broke.
Does the president believe that there ought to be any consequences for any DOD officials who knew about the condition of Secretary Austin but did not report that information?
That's going to be up to Pentagon leadership to decide.
Well, what does the president believe? I mean, he's the commander-in-chief.
The president believes that Secretary Austin should get the appropriate care that he needs to get better so he can get back at work at the Pentagon. He believes we ought to learn from this, both in terms of notification and about transparency to the American people. We're gonna do what we have to do. As Karine said, we're also going to take steps here at the White House to make sure that we have a good, tight alignment across the interagency about notification procedures on delegation of authorities.
Secretary Austin has been released from Walter Reed. He spent 2 weeks there before leaving this past Monday. In a statement released following his discharge from the hospital, Austin said he was grateful for the excellent care he received and was eager to fully recover and return as quickly as possible to the Pentagon. Walter Reed doctors said that Austin had progressed well and that his strength is rebounding.
So that call is very interesting, says explicitly no sirens. I'm sorry, the ambulance has sirens when it shows up because they specifically didn't want people to know about it. That seems to add credence to the idea that it was a little bit underhanded how they tried to leave Biden in the dark, no? I
mean, it's interesting. My big question with this story, completely acknowledging that obviously this was poorly handled, is whether the cover-up is bigger than the crime, is worse than the crime, and what exactly...
Oh, it's undoubtedly worse than that. I mean, what the crime is, what he had to go to the hospital. It's not. It's fine.
And if that's the case, what exactly are the implications here of this story, which has... It's worth reporting on, but has seemingly maybe garnered outsized attention. And I'm not denying that there might be some bigger implications that I'm missing. But this is from the Washington Post from about an hour ago. They say that he had taken steps to temporarily transfer authority for certain operational matters to his deputy, Kathleen Hicks, but did not disclose the diagnosis or surgery to his chief of staff or others. You heard a spokesperson there saying that they're reviewing the practices, the chain of command practices to make sure authority is properly delegated in emergency situations like that. But broadly speaking, the idea of wanting to keep an emergency ride to the hospital relatively private, regardless of what your job is, regardless of what your professional context is, do I want my neighbors to know that I'm going to the hospital? Do I want to have some generalized medical privacy? Yeah, I don't know that I see that as especially insidious or necessarily as connected to the failure to disclose to his bosses. The problem isn't that he didn't let the public know. The problem is that he didn't let other people in the White House know who could then make the proper accommodations for him not being at his post, right?
Yeah, I don't know that it's getting outsized media coverage. I mean, we're not covering it like doing the whole show about it. We've mentioned it a couple times because it is odd. I mean, yeah, everybody should have the right to medical privacy. I mean, it's fairly standard practice, I think, to do the sirens. Can normal people ask for them to sneak in a little bit more surreptitiously? I genuinely don't know. I live in an apartment building, and I see ambulances, medical, police, all those vehicles like constantly.
Well, what the dispatcher said, and this is again from the Post, the 911 dispatcher said usually when they turn into a residential neighborhood, they'll turn them off, the lights and sirens, but added that the driver is legally required to keep them on while transiting main roads. So I don't think one can characterize it as a
looking for
bizarre
special
request.
Accommodations.
Yes, when it's something they apparently do already. And again, I don't know what the implications of that are supposed to be, that I don't want my neighbors to see me hauled away in an ambulance looky-loos coming out and watching me, a public figure being wheeled away in a moment of vulnerability. That to me is not what's so damning. What's so damning is the idea that someone in a senior cabinet position, while America is on the brink of escalating conflict in the Middle East, war in Ukraine, and all these other kinds of things, simply would be gone and under anesthesia and not be able to respond or delegate authority.
But it's hard not to escape the conclusion that those two things are related.
How so?
In that he didn't want it to leak out that he was going. That's what I read into this. Not just that he didn't want he didn't want the Biden administration officials to realize that this was what was happening to him, as evidenced by the fact that the deputy didn't know what was going on. They didn't report it, and so it seems related. It seems not just I don't want to embarrass me in front of my neighbors. If they turn down the sirens when they turn into a residential street at night and they don't want to wake people up, that sounds. I'm not imputing their practices. That sounds great.
Right, I totally get that. But imagine if there were a world where he did inform his superiors, but had also made the same 911 call. The 911 call wouldn't be damning. So it does seem to me that the critical issue here is whether or not he did what he was supposed to do in a professional capacity to protect the country by not leaving his post unguarded.
But the fact that he had the wherewithal to make that request for keeping down the lights and can we sneak me out of here gives credence to the idea that not informing people wasn't just some oversight or oops, I should have, but I kind of forgot it too, and it was stressful, and I didn't. But was like part of an effort to actively mislead in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I know.
I think that's the concern.
I've seen this floated out. I can't remember if John Kirby said this or somebody else, but there's this idea that he is a military guy who does not want to showcase vulnerability, that he didn't want to publicly talk about struggling with prostate cancer, which is a particular kind of cancer that has implications for one's kind of masculinity as compared to other kinds of cancers, and that all of this, including his very negligent, to be clear, failure to let the Biden administration know what was happening, was as much about his kind of personal insecurities around what he was going through and his personal psychology than a conspiracy of some sort to what exactly? What explanation is there for not disclosing something like that apart from that you're embarrassed? I mean, did he get anything out of it? Was he sabotaging the U.S. government with some negative outcome? I get that he was professionally wrong. Like, he did the wrong thing and something bad could have happened. But it's hard for me to read into it a kind of nefarious agenda when I can't see what he would have gained from it.
Yeah, I didn't.
Apart from privacy, apart from guarding himself against embarrassment.
I didn't know prostate cancer is particularly embarrassing.
No?
No, I've never heard that before. I guess I can follow that train through.
Men struggle with ED afterward. They struggle with incontinence. Okay. It affects your sex organs in a quite literal way. So, of course, it's stigmatizing. It's part of why men don't get the checkups as regularly as they should. All of those things are definitely built into a prostate cancer diagnosis and treatment. I think that is... That's pretty common, and I can see the psychology of that makes sense to me. Doesn't excuse it, of course, but the psychology of that does make some sense to me in the absence of any other explanation. But I'm sure we'll hear more about this, and we'll let you know if there's any more that's revealed about what exactly was going on in this truly bizarre case of non-disclosure. Stick around, more Rising for you right after this.